Hey guys, Old Guy Gaming here, and today I am super excited because I'm going to be unboxing my first retro gaming console, the granddaddy of them all, the Atari 2600. Now this of course is the black edition, the fourth version of the console that Atari put out, affectionately known as the Vader Console. So I earmarked whenever I started doing my retro gaming hobby, started it about, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. I earmarked this console as the first one that I wanted to start collecting for a couple of reasons. First, of course, being nostalgia. That was the gaming console that I was playing whenever I was a kid. So I have a lot of fond memories of this console, and it really wanted to recapture some of those memories with some of those great games back in the day. But the second, of course, was cost. I picked this one up for about $40 at my local CD warehouse that has a retro gaming section, oddly enough. In the games themselves, there's a whole bunch of games out there that are $1, $2, $3 games, and they're really easy to come by. So if you're looking for an inexpensive way to get into the original hardware retro gaming, the Atari 2600 is a great place to start. I'm also going to show off our Atari console that was donated to me by a member of the Atari Age forums who just handed me an Atari. So I'd like to show that one off as well. And lastly, I've been raiding my local retro shops here in the last couple of weeks, picking up all the $1 and $2 games to kind of get myself a starting collection, a starting point for my retro gaming collection. Those are games I intend to do videos on later as I continue on my progress to find the top 100. But so let's go on into the unboxing, shall we? All right, so here we are on the bench, and here it is, the Atari 2600 Vader Edition. Again, this was the fourth version of the console that Atari produced. The box is in pretty good condition. You can tell that people have been like jamming stuff in here. There's kind of a seam down here that I'm not particularly happy with, but it is what it is. I mean, this is obviously how I got it. You got it for $40. You can't really complain too much. One of the things I do want to point out, of course, is that serial number right there. It'll be important later on down the line because the console in the box does match the serial number. I know that that's important for a lot of collectors, so to know that this is technically the box, this is the box that came with this console whenever it was opened. Some of the other art, if you haven't seen, the other thing to take note of is the 2600 label on the side of this. In previous versions of the console, it was just the Atari VCS, or Video Computer System. This was the first version of the console where they adopted the 2600 logo, which we all came to know and love. Now, it's always been, and you'll take note here when we see the console itself, it actually has 2600 right on the face of the console. It's always been the model 2600 in all of the versions of print that this was always in, but they officially just adopted the title. So this is the back right. Now the funny thing, my wife pointed this out later, we paid $40 for this console. There's a sticker from the place where I bought it from that says $60, so I must have gotten it at a reduced price. But it does give you a nice little library of the games here. One of my favorite games of all time, Warlords, which we'll take a look at here later. Berserk, you've got Haunted House in here. You've got Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, or I'm sorry, this was not Temple of Doom, this was Raiders of the Lost Ark. Breakout, Centipede, some of the classics, but you also have, I always thought this was funny when I looked at this box, you've got Pac-Man and you've got E.T. Two of the games that they blame for the crash of '83 on was Atari overly heavily investing these two games. Oddly enough, Pac-Man's still the #1 selling game, regardless of the fact that they may have overinvested in it. They do blame those two particular games for the crash of '83. And the other interesting part of this console is this was in production when the 5200 came out. So they were literally, Atari quite literally had two consoles, I'm going to move my mouse out of the way, had two consoles in production at the same time, which I think is really interesting. And you'll see that in some of the material inside. So the first thing that you're going to take note of, we'll go ahead and take this out of the pack. This is the Audiovisual Switch. Oh boy, do I have some fond memories for this one. For those that do not know, the Atari has not your standard component outputs like video and to audio. This is everything that comes over on this console is on this one cable. So what you were supposed to do is you were supposed to put this into here, and you were supposed to take these little pins, which obviously this one is broken. I don't know if you can see that. This one here is broken. Went onto the back of your TV. Now, other models of this one had a coax cable coming out. This one does not. So it makes me feel like this is not the original one that came with this. So that's probably one of the components, if I do want to get this complete, that I'm going to want to replace, is getting the original Switch. So let's start getting into some of these. Now we've got the Vader version of the controllers. We have not one, but two. And the Vader ones were noticed because they do not have the yellow paint. These are just the black paint versions. So these are the ones that would have come with this particular console. So we'll go ahead and set those aside. Now, the other thing I do have, first of all, we mentioned this before. This is something, I got this off of Amazon. This cost me $6 for two of these. One of them is currently living on my high-definition TV at home, but this is what you need to replace this piece of crap. You can basically not use that, and you get yourself one of these. This is an RF female to coax male connection. So that whole box gets replaced just with that, and then you can just use this coax end to screw into any TV that actually has a coax cable in the back. Now, keeping in mind, you do still need to put it on the correct channel, which we'll get to in a second. So I got this off of Amazon. I got two of these for like $6. So I'll provide a link in the description down below if you're interested in where to find that or how to get that. So that did not come in the box. I put that in there for demonstration purposes. The other thing, I don't know if you may have caught this or not, this is the original Atari power adapter. So I think it's interesting that, you know, even though it's in the box, they still took the time to put Atari iconography all over it. And this one does work. This is the one that we play with whenever we are playing games in the living room every other night. This is the Atari that we use. So let's get to the big guy. We'll set that aside for a moment. So this is it. This is the Vader console. Now, this came to me very, very clean. You'll take note of the Atari 2600 label iconography right on the front console. This, of course, is pretty much a clone of the 4-switch Woody that you're used to. The difficulty switches have been moved to the back of the console. We'll get to that. Your power switches, color and black and white TV. That's right, kids. Back in the day, black and white TVs were a thing, even when this console was released. But other games, like Star Master, for example, took advantage of this button, and because games of that era didn't have menus in any way, shape, or form, they took advantage of being able to use this. And some other games even went as far as to use the difficulty switches for controls in the game. Your reset button, of course, and the game select, which will allow you to switch between individual channels. So if we want to take a look here at the back of the console, here are your two controller ports, one here and one here, your difficulty switches, and your power. The channel select that I was talking about is here. You have a option between channel 2 and channel 3. I choose channel 3. It's one half dozen and 6 in the other. It doesn't really matter which one you go with, as long as you're aware that the TV that you're plugging this into is on that channel. Now, more modern TVs may not have the coax cables. I'd recommend going to your local Goodwill, thrift store, something like that, and see if you can find yourself an old school VCR. You can plug this into the back of a VCR, set that to the correct channel, and then use the component cables to push out to the back. And the last thing I do want to take note of, it does look like, just judging from the way that I looked at this, it looks like somebody repaired this, as in this was peeling off and it may have been glued back down. Not sure how I feel about that, but you will take note that those serial numbers do indeed, if I can get it off the shine, there we go. Those serial numbers do indeed match. So this is indeed the console that came with the box in this box. So some of the other stuff I got, just for giggles, we got the Atari All-Stars catalog. What I find interesting about this is they're also advertising the 5800 right there, or the 5200 right there. So you've got the 2600 and the 5200 all in the same catalog. So they were running two consoles at the same time at the time of release on here. It also came complete with the manual. Interesting to take note, they do show the paddles here, but clearly the paddles did not come with this original model. And I don't know, as you saw it was in there, I don't know how you fit them in here. So those are something you're going to have to buy separately. And they do mention that later in here, that they do not come with the cables. But the manual is clean. Pretty good condition from what I can tell, considering the age. And apparently the hard thing to find with this, it's got the warranty card. Now, the warranty card is a little kind of showing its age, but this is an Atari service. This gives you the warranty, which I'm going to assume is well out of warranty by now. But apparently these are really hard to come by for these consoles. So those were the contents of my Vader 2600 system, this is the system that we play on every day, or at least most every day, to play our games on the table. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the donated video arcade that we got from a user from the Atari Age forums. Okay, so I want to get on to this console. This one was sent to me by a member of the Atari Age forums. When I got into the hobby, one of the first places I went to was the Atari Age forums, and there was a guy who was giving away stuff, just Atari stuff. And he was doing it on a pay it forward kind of process, meaning I would be more than happy to send this stuff to you because you don't have it and you will enjoy it. However, you're going to need to pay that forward someday, and I absolutely intend to do that. So one of the things that he sent me when I mentioned this to him, let's first get on to the games that he sent me. So he just sent me a few games for free. And he paid for the shipping. So I got a copy of, Activision's Bridge. We got a bowling. No label, unfortunately, but that is okay. I did get the uncommon version of the Activision Space Shuttle, which is really cool. You'll find out here that as I'm collecting my games, I'm trying to collect the ones with the full artwork. So not that this wasn't appreciated. I absolutely will enjoy it and keep it. But I am going to go out and try to find one that has the full art. And then we got this really rough barnstorming. It does play, but obviously this is going to be one that I'm going to want to replace at some point in time in my collection because it's not a good showpiece, but it still plays, so it gives you the opportunity to play. But then he sent me over this Telegames. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, way back in the day when Atari was producing Pong consoles, they came up with a contract with Sears Roebuck, and they were producing game consoles for them, so it would have the Telegames title on it, but it was still the same console. So this is the same Woody console that you would have bought if you'd have bought an Atari 4-switcher, except, of course, it's been given the Sears iconography. So no, it doesn't have the Atari logo here as the video arcade version. Doesn't say Atari here. Obviously, it's got Telegames, and it's got the silver on here. So again, this is basically the exact same model that you would have gotten for 4-switch Woody than you would have with the Telegames version. I will take note on this one. He went through the process of actually modifying this one. So take note, there's no cable coming out of here. There's nothing. Because he went ahead and modified it for standard component cables for video and audio. And he also adapted the power cable to go to a more modern power supply. So I thought that was really cool. I was really excited whenever I got this. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if it's my TV, my cables, or the power supply or what, but unfortunately, this console doesn't seem to want to function for me. I can't seem to get anything out of it. I have switched cables out. I even followed his instructions and cracked it open to take a look and see if I could find any loose cables either here or at the power, and I'm not finding anything. What I think it is, I put a voltmeter on it, and I think it's not getting the power. So I think it might be the power supply that he sent over that may not be functioning. He did say that he had tested this before it's sent out, but unfortunately I was not able to get it to function, which is the reason why when I was donated a free console to start my collection with, I had to go out and buy one because I had already gotten games and I didn't have a console to play it on. So I'm not going to get rid of this. I am going to hang on to it and see if I can find a proper power supply, if I can get this functioning and working. But because I really like the idea of coming out of here doing the standard component cables as opposed to that clunky one cable that comes out of here to start off with for more modern TVs, for example. But anyway, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the games I picked up, which I'm considering my my retro gaming starter set. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the games I got, and of course you need the starting copy, the game that came packed with every Atari 2600 console, Combat. Of course, I was lucky enough to find one. Again, I think I may have mentioned this before. I'm going for the ones with the full art. And the reasons for it are pretty simple. Obviously, if you've never touched the 2600 before, the graphics aren't 100% great. They are 1977 and above into 92 graphics. So for a gaming console, the graphics aren't very good. So what we did have is your imagination. And being able to look at the art to kind of get an idea what the game is supposed to do is super helpful, especially considering, I think this actually goes to that thing. We'll just throw that away. It was super helpful for my kids, for example, to be able to look at the cover of a game and say, oh, this gives me an idea of what this game's about. So all the games I'm trying to collect are going to have the full cover art. So, of course, every Atari's got to have Combat. If you shake a stick somewhere in the neighborhood, a copy of Combat will fall out of a tree somewhere. So you need to find those. One of the other iconic games for the 2600, Space Invaders. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the Atari 2600 was not the leading console whenever it first came into existence. There were other competing consoles for people's money at that time frame, and the game that brought people over to the 2600 was the Space Invaders port. It was originally an arcade game that they ported over to the Atari. It's a really good port of the game, and this game alone is really what put the 2600 on the map for most people. Moving on to arcade ports that did really well, we've got to go with a copy of Asteroids. Again, I love the artwork alone on this one is one of my all-time favorites, but this is a really fun game. Great game, a must-own for anyone that's going to be getting into 2600 gaming consoles. Speaking of must-own, we must talk about the Immortal Warlords, one of, if not my all-time favorite games. From the best of my knowledge, and please correct me in the comments down below, the only game that I'm aware of that you can play 4 players on for the 2600. Now, of course, you're going to have to run out and get yourself not 1, but 2 sets of these. And these are actually getting a little more difficult to find, but you can find them. They come, most of them make sure that they're clean because these old Pong style controllers get a little bit jittery. So they just need a good cleaning before you get them. But you need two pairs of this that come with 2 of these to get the 4-player going, but still a fantastic game. 1 player, 2 player, 4 player. It's a great party game. Highly recommend this game. Speaking of continuing with the console ports, Berserk, one of my all-time favorite games. Love the artwork, love this game. Can't wait to start doing reviews on this game. And again, what you're going to find with a lot of the Atari games is a lot of these were games that were in the arcade that got ported over to home consoles. Defender, no different. Another game that came specifically from the arcade into here. Now, I know that a lot of people don't particularly care for this port. There is another game that is a more truer recreation on the Atari 2600 of the Defender Atari game, or what am I thinking? Arcade game. However, this one's still pretty good. I have a lot of fond memories of playing this game. I got this one whenever I got Combat. It was kind of a 2-deal offer, but golf. It's a game. We'll go into it later. And then, of course, we started getting into the artwork that kind of matches over. Miss Pac-Man. I know that there is the Abomination that is the first port of Pac-Man over to the 2600. This is a much more truer Pac-Man port over. Great game, fantastic game. I consider this a must-have for any Atari owner. I will get the original Pac-Man just to do the review. And all of these so far have been $2 and under that I've gotten at local games retro shops. Raiders of the Lost Ark, also one of my all-time favorite games. One of the few games that actually has an end. You can beat this game. It's a little confusing. You need to read the manual and you need a little bit of luck, but it absolutely has a game. So this was, unlike all of the other games that we've seen so far that were arcade ports, and basically they're just, can you set the high score for this game? And there's no real end to it. This one had an end. There is a way to beat this game. Getting on to the more of the tradition of the arcade ports, Joust, one of my all-time favorites. We're going to line that up right next to Phoenix, another arcade port. 2 great games. Cannot wait to do the reviews on this. Continuing on the line of arcade ports, Frogger. Oh, such a great game. So much fun. Not necessarily the most truest what's the word I'm looking for? Representation of the arcade game, but still a super fun game. The music is iconic. It still sticks in my head to this day. The very first Star Wars game to ever be ported to any home console, Empire Strikes Back. Now, I know a lot of folks don't like this particular game. I love this game. I played the crap out of this game when I was a kid, and I'm really looking forward to doing the review. Now, one of my favorite developers of games was iMagic, and of course, I picked up some of the great titles. Atlantis, fantastic game, and this really started pushing the limits of what the Atari console could do graphics-wise. Really cool game. Line that right up against one of my second favorite iMagic games, Cosmic Ark. Cannot wait to start doing all the reviews for all these games. And then where else would it be but another Space Invaders clone? We've got to go with Demon Attack. Again, great game, a lot of fun. A little bit different than, of course, Phoenix and Space Invaders, but still super cool. You'll find that there were a lot of games from this era that took what Space Invaders did and kind of copied it and put their own little twist on it, but they are still a ton of fun. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention Activision. Activision was a group of 4 developers that used to work for Atari, and all they wanted was to put their names on the cover of the games. It's actually where one of the first Easter eggs came out, is the adventure game, where the developer just wanted credit for his work. But those 4 developers went on to move on to make their own game company, and that was Activision. And one of the first games they put out was Pitfall. Fantastic game. Really looking forward. Now, there is a sequel to Pitfall. I'm looking forward to picking that one up as well. Again, another game like Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can beat this game. There are 32 treasures that you need to pick up in this game, and you have 20 minutes to do it. So there is a way to beat it. Now, another must-have game for the Atari 2600, you cannot go without River Raid. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest, I never owned this game. I never played this game. I never touched this game. So I'm looking forward to doing the review on this one, because it's genuinely going to be my initial reaction to actually playing this game. Who knew? I was a young kid and there wasn't a lot of friends of mine that had River Raid, so I didn't know how good the game was, but this is really high on a lot of people's list for one of the best games ever made for the console. So really looking forward to doing a review of that game. One of my personal favorites, Star Master. And look how clean that is. Look how clean that is. It's beautiful. It's almost like it's brand new. Again, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but one of my favorite games ever made for the Atari 2600 console. Still have never beat it on the highest level of the Star Master. I think I've beat the 3rd level, which is, what is it? It's got it right here, Wing Commander. I've beaten Wing Commander. Cannot beat Star Master. It's super hard. Again, another game that has an end. You can beat this game. It is possible. Just sheer fun. Spider Fighter. Another one of my favorite games when I was a kid growing up. Now, there's another game that Activision put out called Mega Mania, which gets a lot more credit for being a better, faster game. I never owned that game. I never played that game. So for me, where my heart lies is with Spider Fighter. Cannot wait to do the review. I think I'm going to start with this game and doing my game reviews. And last but not least, a Defender clone from Activision, Defender done better, Chopper Command. I just love the sounds. I love everything about this game. I am really looking forward to it. And everything that you see here, I think I got for under $20. All the games that you see here, I got for under $20. So again, this is like my starting point for my collection. I intend to grow this. I have about 120 games I want to get for the system. I'm not looking to do a complete set, but this is where I'm starting with my retro gaming. So that's it, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to the close. So that's it. That's my Atari 2600. Again, not entirely complete in the box, but pretty close enough. If you guys can help me out in the comments down below, let me know how those games came with the console. Did they just come loose in the box with the instruction manuals? Were they boxed? Just because it's so close to being complete in the box with the matching serial numbers, I kind of want to get it complete. Not that I'm super interested in collecting everything in the box, but you know, since it's 90% of the way there, I'd kind of like to get it there. So let me know in the comments down below what pieces I am missing. If you did like the video, of course, like, subscribe, always helps out the channel. And until next video, guys, always keep your cards clean.